5:59-ish, give or take, and I'll call the meeting to order. So we've got an agenda that's in a little bit different order than usual, just because this is our first meeting post town meeting, and we have some organizational business to handle. So we're gonna run through those items the best we can, and then we'll likely add a public comment period, I think, after that, to discuss or take up any issues that aren't already on the agenda, which was originally scheduled for 6:50. So we may, if there are other members of the public that show up for a public comment around 6:50, revisit that, but we'll just kind of play it by ear a little bit. So to those who were re-elected and elected, congratulations and welcome. Did both of you have the opportunity to sign the oath of office?
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, look at that. Jamie's coming in right on time. Sweet. So the next order of business is going to be the electing of select board officers of chair and vice chair. And I'd like to start with nominating Jamie Morby as vice chair. She's arrived just in time to defend myself. That's right. Would anybody like to second that? Would you like to accept that nomination?
I will accept that nomination.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Congratulations, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
And I'll take nominations for chair.
I would make a motion that we have Jordan Keys as chair of the select board.
Second.
Aha.
All right. Thank you. I'll accept that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. So the next order of business is to certify the town meeting elections, which we don't need to do.
It's that document.
Oh, it's this one, just got it.
Officers you just elected.
Thanks, Barbara. If you literally just explained that to me, and I still. So we'll circulate this, which is just certifying the elections of the officers, and each one of us will have the opportunity to sign that. The next item up for discussion are rules and procedures. So these are the rules and procedures that dictate the operation of our conduct in meetings. Has everybody had the chance to review the rules and procedures that were posted to the share drive?
So these are the rules and procedures that we adopted last year, correct?
Yeah, fairly recently in August, with some modifications relative to statutory changes, as well as just some general organizational stuff. We also wanted to clear up some language about the use of executive sessions, which we've added some more substantial language to. One of the bigger changes that we have been playing around with for the last few months, I guess, or discussing on and off, is the potential to bump the meeting forward to like 5 o'clock or 5:30 as opposed to a 6 o'clock start time, which creates a little bit of a logistical challenge with our recording secretary and her day job obligations, but she'll be winding down those responsibilities as we bring on a new recording secretary or recording individual. So it's kind of back on the table, and I just wanted to open that up for discussion to see if anybody had any strong opinions about that. The thought process being, if we start a little bit earlier, we might get a little we might increase our odds of getting home at an hour that, you know, might allow us for food, or bedtime routines and that sort of thing. But obviously for those of us with office obligations, it challenges things. So just wanted to have a dialogue around that. Are there other opinions?
I'm very flexible and could do either during, so if other people have constraints.
I would not be opposed to starting earlier.
Does earlier add a benefit for the town staff or clerk at all, just for bringing?
Leave early on select board days and get a little break before coming back here. So we would just probably maintain that and be a little more coordinated about it. So people who needed to go home could go home.
So thank you for asking, and I know I'm not on the select board, don't have any part of this discussion, except to say that we have 3 new applicants for the new select board recording secretary. And and we went ahead and posted it before this decision was
Oh,
made.
sure.
Because Kari wanted the posting out there before town meeting.
Yeah,
So whoever might be selected for that new position has been told that the select board starts at 6 o'clock.
Okay,
So I don't know if you want to wait 2 more weeks when you're ready to hire that person and make sure they can make that earlier time.
okay, yeah, I think that's totally
Makes
fair, and makes sense. I mean, we can revisit these at any time. I think for the time being, most important to make sure that they're on the books and we're
Yeah.
working towards a standard here. The other big piece of feedback was some input that was provided by a resident on considerations for conflict of interest and open meeting law and regulations, which we added to the share drive, and hopefully you all had the opportunity to have a look at those. Are there any questions about those?
So this was an email sent to us in November, right?
Yeah.
Was there any follow-up at the time that it came in?
Acknowledgement for sure, and we tentatively, or at least I remember tentatively committing to Dot that we would find an opportunity to review this in the context of adopting these at this time. Originally, we were hoping to try to get spend some time on that as an agenda item before town meeting, but didn't have the opportunity to put that in. So we just wanted to add it there. Yep.
Yeah, I read both things, but in our adopted procedure, I didn't see anything about executive session in there. Am I missing something?
It's certainly covered by statute.
Right.
Specific reasons.
I understand that, but it's just not in here, so I just didn't,
Yeah,
I think there is something at the end of the document, I read it today. It talks about when you come out of executive session, what you need to talk about. It's.
Yes, Doug.
I think 5:30, people live out of town, working out of town, that's too early if they wanna come here and talk.
Yeah.
I mean, it may work good for you guys, but this is not what the town is working for you guys. We're working to help taxpayers.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, Doug, and fair. That's why we haven't moved too quickly on trying to move it earlier. And we've received that, so, yeah.
At 5 o'clock, they gotta get it. That's not working for them. Might work for you, but that's not what we're here for. We're working for them, not you.
I think one of the things we talked about to mitigate that was sort of stacking some administrative stuff
That's right.
at the beginning and still having a sort of general public comment and the bigger issues come up after 6.
So actually kind of flipping it
Yeah.
from what you've been doing, yeah.
So we'll leave the we'll leave the 6 p.m. For now, for sure, and save that for any further kind of conversation with the new recording position and hire. I'm having a hard time finding the language specifically where,
I read it twice and I didn't see it.
okay.
Yeah, I don't either. I thought it was.
Well, I wouldn't have any of that language workshopped at this point, for adding in there, and I think would probably be appropriate to make sure we have some language prepared for consideration. So, is everyone comfortable with adopting these, rules and regs rules and procedures as they are? And committing to put them back on the agenda for, well, we can bring them up on the next meeting. We can add them to the next couple of agenda items as a placeholder, I think. And we'll have a decision hopefully in the next couple of meetings on a recording position.
Are you looking to add some language about executive sessions into this document?
I believe so, or
Reflecting the
open,
statute?
reflecting the statute, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could just say something very general, like all executive sessions will be in.
In accordance with
In
statute.
accordance with the,
Exactly.
statute. I don't think it's a good idea to repeat the language.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Go ahead and commit to doing it that way.
Under number 6.
I think number 6 was the one that was added, and it was, so that is the open meeting law statute, that it calls out, but that language there is specific to the, appointment, or the use of executive session for, the appointment of elected officials or public officers, so it's very specific. Okay, so, can I get a motion then to adopt the rules and procedures as currently presented and previously adopted on August 19th?
Second.
All in favor?
I
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And we'll put it back on the future agendas. Moving next to appointing of liaisons. So this is kind of a discussion item. So previously there was a history of appointing a specific liaison from the board for each of the fire departments. And we just wanted to kind of bring it up for discussion. Certainly offer it up to anybody who feels particularly compelled or motivated or interested in serving as a liaison for either or both of those, but I think in the past, this has been kind of an overpromise, under-deliver type situation. And Kari has graciously offered himself up to try to attend these on a regular, somewhat regular basis, certainly at least like once a year at key times of the year when we're approaching budgeting or considering.
I'm committed to going to all of the East Montpelier meetings.
Oh, okay.
And then at least one Woodbury this year, no more.
I'd offer to go to a few of the Woodbury ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel strong enough about it? You want to be the official liaison, or?
As long as you don't expect me to go every week, yeah.
I was gonna ask, what's the frequency, the cadence of the meetings,
East Montpelier is 3 times a year, I think.
April, August, and October, I believe.
But with the East Montpelier ones, we need multiple members to attend.
You need a
right?
form for
We need a
those.
forum.
Yeah.
To take an action.
It's not all on one person. So,
I don't know that we need to, we just have, because the last year and a half worth of business has involved discussion of the agreement. I don't know if that would change a little bit in expectation unless there's a specific.
well, Kari said if
Decision.
they're gonna take action, we need to have a forum.
Yeah,
And that, it was the previous select board's protocol to always warn it and have at least a quorum, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a joint meeting of the two town select boards and the EMFD board of directors. And that's per the interlocal agreement, just to keep everybody
Which we
up
just
to date, budgets and all of that. So it's three times a year.
Woodbury has a once a month meeting.
Yeah, they meet regularly throughout the month, but their monthly
Their
business
business
meeting is the first Tuesday, I believe it's the first Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. May I ask a question about that? So, one of the times that James was here meeting with you guys last summer, you had asked to see their monthly business meeting agenda. So I've been making sure you guys get that for the last year. Do you want to continue that protocol, or is that not necessary?
I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
I scan through them and keep apprised.
Okay, you want to keep getting
I
them?
think so. It's
Okay.
not onerous.
Thank you.
Want to be an official liaison? Yeah, okay. So can I have a motion to appoint Bill as the select board liaison to the Woodbury Fire Department?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thanks, Bill, appreciate it. So Barbara, yeah, that'd be great if you could continue to just work with them to get that and make sure it's circulated at the very least to
That would be,
Bill.
will be tomorrow then, right? You said
It
the,
was last, was it
Last
last
week.
week?
sorry.
It was
Yeah.
last
It
week.
was the day after town meeting.
gotcha, okay.
And James is pretty local and engaged, so I would
After town meeting on that.
just stay in touch with James. Right.
James is no longer what was he, the president?
President.
He's no longer
Greta-
president,
Greta
but
Dunlap
yeah.
now.
But he'd be a good resource, I would
Yes.
imagine, for keeping in touch with business. Great, so the next item that we had is a check-in with our road foreman, which we're not going to have. So I would like to ask if there are members of the public who are would like to comment on anything that is not on the agenda that was warned for the meeting. And I see Larry, Craig, and we've got Doug as well. Yeah, okay.
I have a lot of problems going on in this town, but you know, I can't talk about them all tonight.
All right,
I'm not going, but we are coming back. And I'm having a little trouble with the town. Drivers. Okay, well, first of all, the post spray, that's a big thing.
Yep.
That's a big, he goes down there and takes it out. And he has no right to do that. And there's a lot of people ripped about that. They wanna come, they don't really, they don't like us. I'm telling you, I can't get them to come. They just don't like us. I don't know if they don't like me or they don't like you, but they don't wanna come. Not at this point.
okay,
We're going to get that. I'm not going away, buddy. I'm not going away. I promise you.
yeah,
We're gonna get that back. That's an asset to this town. If your artesian well goes to hell, you can go down to that spring and get a bucket full of water and flush your toilets and whatever. And if it, and sometimes those artesian wells, the motor goes or whatever. And you need water. So you can go down and get it. And the old timers used to use that thing not every day, but the horses used to stop there. I know people, unbelievable.
well, so Doug, I'd like to, you've mentioned this a couple of times. And we've heard the issue with, closing out the turnaround and the history there, is frankly relative to some very vocal feedback about trash being regularly dumped there. And we've had that conversation, but what I'd like to ask is that, we have a commitment and obligation to respond to things that represent an interest of the community,
I
right?
think
And
it's-
so we,
A lot of people in town.
I hear you, but right now, from the perspective of the select board, there aren't a lot of people bringing up that particular issue aside from yourself. So if we can get a better idea of the people who really want to see something done, it doesn't have to be a formal petition, but some commitment from members of the public to take up that particular issue, and then, frankly, it's unclear to me who has the right to the water or where the spring is and that sort of thing. So it would be nice if that group of individuals who's motivated to see something done on that can do some of the homework on.
That's been a spring for 100, probably 125,
Yeah.
30 years. So who owns it? Town owns it, not that guy behind it.
I can't speak to that. I am not a land use lawyer, and so
That's common sense, common sense.
I disagree, Doug.
Huh?
We need more than that if we're going to take action to
So you're gonna
and commit
make me
resources
get
to
out
it.
the bush, Get everybody to sign?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, if we do that, if I do that.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a special town meeting, a special one.
well, I'm not gonna commit to that either, Doug, but
Okay.
but
We'll have a special town.
we will certainly dedicate meeting time to having the conversation about it and find a way to consider it. So, do you want to bring up other issues, to consider in
Yeah,
addition to?
there's trees being marked up in this town,
Mhm.
we keep letting them go, don't do anything about it. I'll bet you, almost bet you there's 100 trees in this town. If you went around and counted all of them. I just went down George Road and I saw 3 or 4 there. And you were up on Tucker Road the other day. You saw trees that marked
I
up.
saw a few trees that were hit
Yeah.
by something.
Huh? Oh, yeah, and you can't keep doing that, it kills them, I'm telling you, it kills them.
Yeah.
And we're planting, and your truck's been off, what, twice last week?
Off the road.
Off road,
There was a truck that slid off the road the week before last.
two trucks, what I understand, okay? But anyway, they get too close, they get too wide, and we tried to slow them down, I bet you I had 40 people on Lighty Ridge Road, wanted them down to 25. Everybody on that road except for Belcher. And I went there, and they didn't, I didn't ask you, because you weren't there. But I asked you, I went there to your door, a couple times, you went there. But everybody else on that Lightning Ridge Road, unbelievable. Well, couldn't say enough about that, the speed. And they still, and the whole thing sad about it,
Are we
we
talking,
can't do anything about it.
are we talking about public traffic or
Yeah,
the?
we can't do
Okay.
anything about
We can, and we've committed in this last budget to increasing the allocation for contracted sheriff's department time to increase
Yeah.
enforcement.
it, but you don't wanna, okay. But I've been to sheriff's office, I'm willing to pay for the damn sheriff to come up here and myself. And God, just, I'm willing to pay for
Well, we passed a budget that increased the budget for that, so
it, yeah.
I-
But, we need to get Worcester involved, Calais, and maybe, I don't know, these other little towns around us to put the money in a pot and get it done, And I also wanna tell you, I've got 15 minutes, how many minutes I have left?
well, I didn't ask whether or not Larry or Craig had comments that usually we try to divide it up pretty equally, but you've got
anyway.
another couple of minutes.
All right, so now I got ideas about the road. And I told that to the road committee last year. I know if you should have, they hit those roads so damn fast by my place. And every time they hit it, the water goes, the mud goes, that, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can't slow them down. And my suggestion is, instead of bringing a load of gravel in and just fill the hole, I suggested to come down through with a grader and get below them mud holes, those memories in the potholes. Grade them off to one side. I've seen them do that over in Goose, where Goose Neck is? Oh, no, do something. Anyway, and they did that, they pushed all the dirt over on one side and made a windmill, right on the edge. And, you know, that was muddy, and they let it dry out. And they got rid of the potholes, and they let it dry out, and then when it dried out, they brought it back. Put it back in the road, they didn't bring another load or 2 loads or 5 loads of gravel to do that. That was, I thought that was a pretty good idea, but that's a good idea, I think. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't keep up with all these muddles, you just can't do it. If you could slow them down, you probably could, but you can't slow them down. And, you know, I've talked to state, I'm telling you, I have, and I'm willing to pay for it, tell them that, they said I can't hire them. I can't hire them, they won't let me hire them. Yep. So, there's other things, but you know, I'm not gonna do this on my own. There's a lot of people out there that are bitching and moaning, come to me, why me? You know, because I'm the mouthiest guy in town, as you know. And don't shake your head.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I think that's exactly right, Doug. You're the one who's willing to show up to the meeting.
I've
Yep.
seen you in action, and I wanna tell you, right now, when you got that road thrown up, and you brought all these little kids in, and nicely dressed and polite, and sat over there, you sold that. Like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
when you get the road thrown up, the road up in Worcester, on top of the pond, by the pond, going over to Worcester, and it comes down through into Duggan Brook,
The dam,
huh?
the dam,
Not the dam, the road from Worcester, up on top by the pond, up on top,
Yeah,
there's a second here, class 4, when they wrote it. Now, used to go down through and come out by Duggan Brook. You
Okay.
familiar with that?
Yeah,
yeah.
Huh?
yeah.
Okay, so you were one of the first thing you did when you got into town, yeah, is you got that road thrown out.
No,
What did you do?
that wasn't me.
Oh, we got.
I wasn't even, I
You
wasn't,
got 11 kids here, nice kid,
I-
well dressed.
I promise you, I only have one kid.
Wow. Think you're ready.
No, Doug, that wasn't me. I know the road that you're talking about. I was not
It's
on the
not-
select board at that time. Yeah,
No, it's not thrown up.
No, what is
It's
it?
not, they moved the entrance of it.
Huh?
The previous select board moved the entrance of that road. You're talking about the road that went by Stevenson's place, right? Talking about the Worcester Road, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're talking about the road that used to go out and come out near Duggan Brook. correct?
Yes,
Yes, they went, and it went by, the pond back there.
that
That,
is a pond down over there.
yeah, they moved the entrance further towards Maple Corner,
Yeah.
about 1/10 of a mile.
Yeah.
Other than that, the road isn't thrown up, in my memory.
Well, I heard it was, I think it was, but
anyway. So
Yeah.
I mean, we have spoken a couple of times over the last, few business days, and your concerns have been heard. Another one that you've mentioned is the issue with the town garage, and Kari and I have had
Yeah.
additional conversations.
Water.
Yep.
You-
And we're,
Have you addressed that?
no, we can't make it, first of all, I can't do that on behalf of the rest of the select board. But but Kari and I have had a conversation about it. We have heard from the state about it, and we are going to continue
Can I
to.
speak to it,
Yeah,
just so
please.
people know?
Yeah, sorry.
So Doug, just before town meeting, told me that he was concerned that the pond that's behind the garage
Yeah,
has a pipe.
coming out of the garage,
And he believes it's coming out of the garage.
I don't believe it, I know it.
Okay,
Me and,
So as though waste from the garage is being allowed into this pond. So I
it's not,
I
it's
immediately.
some kid's swimming pool or something, like that road.
Let me finish, it's a body of water. So I spoke with John and Tyler about it, and I actually went and saw it today. The pipe was buried by snow, so I couldn't see
Sure.
that. But what they explained is that there is a pipe. That pond actually belongs, it's on land owned by the McCulloch Crushing quarry parcel. And that's their pipe. It runs from that pond up to their crushing operation because they use water for their crushing process. And they both said it's been that way for as long as they know. There's absolutely not anything from the garage going into that pond. There was, while I was there, voicemail on the message machine from Department of Natural Resources. And they were concerned about, they had heard a concern about this. And so we called, left a voicemail saying, happy to explain what's going on, have you out. So I'll keep you posted.
So, let me ask you a question. How does that help the crushing company when they're way up there and you're way down by the 14th?
There's a pump,
Huh?
there's a pump.
I guess they must be. Anyway.
So
I'm just going a minute.
there's
I
a,
haven't used my 15 minutes up. have I?
it's not an entire 15 minutes, Doug.
Why not?
All right, we'll find you got another 2 minutes then, I guess.
Me?
Nobody else has any comments?
Okay, so what about the rock on my lawn? And I know you guys are all gonna say it's in the town right away. It isn't, but that's all right, you're gonna say that. And I'm not gonna agree with you, but I will, and you gotta agree with me, that the town come and got that rock and took it somewhere. And that's what John Rayband and I were doing, looking for that rock. I don't know where it is. And your truck driver, whatever you wanna call him, he stole that rock. He stole that rock. Whether it's in the town right away or not, he stole it. And we're gonna do something about that. And, that's stealing. That's my rock. And I can ask, I can. You disagree with me? No, that's my rock.
I'm looking at you, Doug. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay, well,
We're
you got a
agreeing.
little grin on your face, and I don't mind, but that rock, I take it to Stowe, Vermont, I can sell that rock for good money, they pay good money for that stuff. Yeah. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say, I want that money, I want that rock back, and if you don't, we'll do something about it. And those two things are gonna happen,
Okay,
okay? So he stole that rock, and remember, that's a felony. And also, he threatened me and Ann one day, when Ann Tulip or whatever she was, what's her last name?
Tulin.
Yeah. She sent 3 guys, two truckloads and the grader, at the top of the hill. They all get out and put their jacket on and their helmet on, and they come walking up the road, one here and one here and one here. And I got a phone call saying, Doug, you get your stakes up on your hedge, your cedar hedge. Cause they're coming down through the gravel. So those guys come up through side by side, and Ann was scared to death, she ran in the barn.
No, Doug,
Wait a
I
minute,
wanna-
don't cut me off.
no,
You cut me off every time.
no,
Yeah, you're not cutting me off.
I believe I've been pretty patient with
Whoa,
allowing you to
yes.
cover the things that, and raise the issues that you've got, but you've also got a well-established history of towing the line right up, starting to make personal attacks and commentary on members of the staff. So
You tell me your history. My
I don't need to tell you.
history of people telling me.
Doug, I'm gonna have to ask you, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave, Doug, if you can't
You
control
can
it.
get the cops to get me out of here.
I don't need to get the cops to get you out here, Doug.
Okay.
We have an obligation to conduct this meeting in a respectful fashion.
I am. Yeah, you said and tell me that I was rude to the people that.
Yep.
Newspapers that come up. I showed that to everybody and nobody ever said to me, Doug, you were rude. You were rude. They come and ask me questions, I answer the question. I always will. I'll tell the truth. Okay?
Yes, Barbara.
Okay, I'm done.
So, yeah, so we're getting comments on the, and that Doug's time is up. So may I make just 3 very quick comments in response to Doug?
Yeah,
You were rude,
I was.
yes.
Well,
Secondly, I'd like to just state for I believe representing the town office, you guys can please correct me, that the only folks that we've ever heard from about the speed limit on Lightning Ridge Road, besides Doug, is Michael Loinian and Jim Wells. And last year, when you guys were holding a series of select board meetings, and it was fairly warned that the study, road studies, what do you call it, the speed studies by CVRPC were warned to the public, and Kari and I specifically went down Lightning Ridge Road folks and sent those agendas to Doug. You'll remember I sent every one of those agendas to you, to Mike Loinian, to Jim Wells, and a series of other people who might be interested. Doug and Mike were the only ones who ever came. No, we never heard from anybody else. The other thing is about the spring. Doug is the only one who ever calls the town office and talks about the spring. We haven't heard that comment from another soul in town. Thank you.
All right, well, with that, I'm gonna wrap up. Thank you, Barbara. I'm gonna wrap up the public comment period and move on with the rest of the agenda.
There's only 30 people that signed that petition that wanted the speed limit goes down. So you can't say 30 people on Lightning Ridge Road, maybe 50. They signed that petition and they snapped it out of my hand.
Doug,
They'll
that
sign it.
we're not discussing that anymore, Doug.
Okay, you have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
I'll be back.
We'll look forward to it.
I hope so. I bet you will.
Next item up are 2025 appointments. So for a little bit of background, these are a list of annual appointments that need to be made every year. Barbara has done the yeoman's work of organizing interests for these appointments and kind of coordinating that. Part of what we wanted to try to establish is kind of a differentiation between how we handle the annual appointments and how we handle appointments to subcommittees. So this one is a little bit unique in that we have folks who are interested in taking up the positions for annual appointment, or as incumbents are interested in reholding those positions. There weren't any contested positions. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to review that list, and I'd open it up to discussion. Does anybody have any particular concerns or questions about that?
I'd just like to say that Chris Steller, who has
Oh, yeah.
offered to serve as the animal control officer second, is on Zoom, if you'd like to talk with him.
Hello.
Chris, thanks
Hello.
for joining.
You're very welcome. It's the least I could do.
You certainly look qualified and appreciate your motivation to serve as the second animal control officer. In addition to Chris's presence and willingness to answer questions, we do have a note from Buffy recommending Chris for the position, and she is the first animal control officer. So that endorsement is well received as well. I certainly don't have any additional questions for Chris, but if anybody else does.
I agree, that your qualifications look appropriate, and I'm sure Buffy would appreciate having a colleague in that role. I just wanted to confirm that, are you a resident of Calais? Because the address that we've got is a Montpelier address, must be your work.
Really? Isn't that interesting? I wonder how you have Oh, I know what it is, because I think in my email correspondence by default, I often have, because I use my email for both personal and professional business, it lists my office, which is in Montpelier. But no, I am a Calais resident of, oh my gosh, almost 25 years.
All right, apologize for not knowing that.
Oh, no, please. I'm on the county road, 8737. I live near Randy Allen and Mason Singer, and diagonally across from the suitors who have the big red riding stable there, just a little north of Bliss Pond Road. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I was looking forward to maybe being peppered by some questions, but by all means, it's not necessary. It's really, it seemed like a very I guess I'd maybe say overdue gesture of trying to serve my community in a bit more, in some measurable way. I get the sense from Buffy that she gave me a lay of the land, and I can be her backup in situations that require it, and happy to do so.
Thank you again, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Well, with that, I propose that we kind of split up these two appointment items, and I would entertain a motion to make the annual appointments as presented on the list and prepared by Barbara as a slate of appointments.
So not just these two, the whole long list.
It's the
altogether.
whole long list.
Okay.
And then I think we'll pivot to a conversation about the Conservation Commission. Is that right? Yeah, which is not actually part of that list.
Sorry,
So
so
moved.
you need a.
I do.
Second.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations and thank you, Barbara. So with that, we have Christine, is that right? As an appointment up for consideration for the Conservation Commission or Commission. And hopefully you've had the opportunity to review the letter of interest that was also posted to the shared drive, as well as Larry Bush's recommendation that was tagged along with that. So I guess I'd open it up. Do you want to make any comments or share a little bit about why you're interested in the position?
Yeah, well, good evening, everyone. It's nice to meet you, those of you who I haven't met yet, and some of you whom I have. Name, Christine, C.H., and the last name is Battlementi Smith.
Oh, I saw it.
Okay.
I can spell
it.
I think I can.
If you have trouble with the roads, just be in touch, I'll get it to you.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, so I'm really eager to get more involved in the town. We moved here in April of last year, so we're coming up on our first full year. And my previous master's degree was in environmental studies with a focus on sustainable development and also conservation biology. I quickly went into nonprofit work and developed lots of skills in the administrative and communication and event planning regions. For the need of it, right, but not because of my desire to not work more tangibly with conservation. But that being said, I found myself sort of needing to support the natural environment in a way that was much more meaningful to me. So yeah, I was on the South Burlington Natural Resources and Conservation Committee, and I really enjoyed supporting that committee while I was on it. So, you know, with some technical expertise, but mostly with my administrative skills and just general like volunteer spirit. I just like helping out and raising my hand to do things, and I like partnering with people in order to achieve goals, like just kind of my thing. And so yeah, it seems like a pretty natural way to start to plant some roots in the community, help out the community, get to know it, and also get to know the landscape really well. It was a little bit of a ramble, sorry. Suddenly
No, that's great.
I got like nervous.
Well, thank you, and welcome to the community. Thanks for showing an interest. It certainly sounds like your background's pretty well aligned, and it sounds like Larry is enthusiastically encouraging the appointment as well, and recognizes that. Have you had an opportunity to attend the Conservation Commission meetings?
Yeah, I've been able to attend too, and it's been like really hard to not be like, I know. I would be excited for the opportunity.
Great. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments that we'd like to offer?
Larry, maybe had anything to say?
Sure, Larry, I'll put it over to you if you'd like to offer up any comments.
Just very briefly, you've got my initial comments, and certainly all of our interactions with Christine since then have been extremely positive. We think that she brings a lot of skills to the table, and she's actually been helping us in an informal way for several meetings now. So, yeah, we think that she would be a good addition to the commission.
And when's the next commission meeting, Larry?
It will be April 2nd.
Okay. So we were kind of tentatively either considering that we'd either put off this appointment to make it with the other ones, but I think if everybody is feeling comfortable with making the appointment now, we can just as easily take it up now. It looks like there's a lot of head nodding there. So with that, I would, is this a 3-year term or 2-year term?
Let me just verify that, please.
It's roughly a 15-year term.
Today said it's a 4-year term.
4-year term.
Almost 15.
Lucky duck, Larry. So with that, I would entertain a motion to nominate Christine to the open 4-year term position on the Conservation Commission.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify?
Yes.
It's a 4-year term, but she's completing a term that expires in 2026.
Oh.
All right.
So you'll be up for nomination again in 2 years. No, what? No,
1 year. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, perpetuity.
So the next items that we have on the agenda are more back to more regular looking agenda items. We've got our administrative items. So reviewing the rest of the agenda, does anybody have any additions or changes to the agenda to propose?
For tonight?
Yeah, for tonight.
I just had one, I went for the public comment. I didn't get a chance to say anything. But
Yeah, sure.
if I could just, I was approached at the town meeting by Michael Fullerton about, he wanted some sort of ordinance in the cemeteries to prohibit people with metal detectors. And I thought that was, didn't know why we even needed one. People should know better, but I think it's something we should consider.
That's interesting.
Has there been an issue that?
I didn't get to talk at the length about it, but it just seems to me that, you know, we should, I'll discuss it with him further and ask him why he thinks he needs this, but you know,
That's a unique one for sure.
yeah.
Do we have any other ordinances about cemetery?
I know Michael said that this has been an issue in other towns, so I think Michael has more information that he can share with you.
Okay.
Does it need to be an ordinance? Could it just be a posted?
Right.
You know,
It could be.
posted sign? Then we wouldn't maybe have teeth with enforcement so much, but
But
if it hasn't even been an issue yet, it might be a place to start before we go down the ordinance road.
Well, yeah,
Cemeteries, though. Or lots of cemeteries, lots of signs to
Right.
maintain.
yeah.
I would just comment.
It'd be interesting that, you know, I'd prefer to charge Michael, I think, to look into it a little, or if anybody else feels particularly motivated to look into it, and then we can kick it over to the ordinance advisory committee, just to like put it on their
This
scope.
sounds to me like an issue where we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It sounds like somebody else has dealt with this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
definitely.
probably some learning that we could.
Okay. All right.
Well,
I'll reach out to Mike.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Bill. Okay, well, unless there are any other kind of shifts around in the agenda, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from the February 24th meeting, which were posted to the shared drive. Hopefully everybody has had the opportunity to review those.
Yeah, I move to approve the minutes of the 24th.
second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Should Barbara
Or
abstain?
should I abstain?
It's,
Yeah.
it's been a
We tend to.
habit. It's not a requirement.
I'll abstain.
She'll abstain to the rich tradition.
The rich tradition.
I'm assuming.
And also posted to the shared drive were the board orders. Hopefully everybody's had the opportunity to review those. Kari, do you want to offer up some commentaries on any of those? There's some special notes in the in Kari's memo
I'm happy to
related to a couple of them, but if there.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I noticed in the board orders. Did our truck not come with tires? Because they charged us for tires.
Yeah, we upgraded the tires.
Oh, okay.
And, the driver assured me that was a very good.
All right.
idea.
Okay.
The ones that they came with were, I guess all seasons or something, they were just worn up to, and we got 6, so we have backups.
Okay.
I know.
It's absurd. I went through the same thing with my truck, and so that didn't seem all of that odd to me, but still frustrating.
Tires aren't $29 anymore.
No, not even close.
Would have preferred that be part of the original proposal.
Yeah. Okay.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the board orders, to approve the board orders and the signing of them by the select board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Oh, thank you. And authorizing the signing of the grant agreement for grant agreement number BR 1279, which is the road inventory grant.
Right, so remember, to participate in the Better Back Roads, we have to do a survey. I think it's every 7 years or something like that, where the road segments are the ones that are within 100 feet of water. We need to go through and inventory those and describe them in a number of ways to identify where there are deficiencies and is a way to prioritize work. So this is, in order to access the grants, we're gonna need to do this work anyway, but they do make some funding available, so it's a $10,688 grant. We would need to match 20%, but we can do that with our own labor. And again, we would be doing this work anyway, so it's, in a way, it's like free money.
So can I get a motion to authorize myself or Kari, probably me?
Either one, I think. is
Okay.
fine.
Authorize me to sign the road inventory grant agreement.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, thank you. Next up, we had the public comment period, but we, I think, took care of that. Just to double check, it doesn't look like we've got any new additions to Zoom. Yes,
Chris who made that motion.
it was Barbara. Getting right to work in her new role.
I just hear female voices.
Yeah, I'm behind the phone.
Yes.
Oh, if that's, I should.
Now, not ever.
So the next item on the agenda is just kind of a debriefing dialogue about town meeting. We've been trying to be kind of mindful about adding these sessions after big events, et cetera, to just kind of do a debriefing and check in to talk about things that we did well, things that could have gone better, improvements that we might want to make till next year, to next year's process. Yep.
Can I just say, I spoke with Martha, earlier today, and, she was interested in the public comment period, so
Oh.
she's joining at 6:50, so.
Oh,
I
okay.
might want to make time for her.
Yep.
She may just want to observe, but you may want to. With Martha Lay, just admitted her, but I don't see.
Oh, yep, so there she was. Sure, I mean, I totally appropriate. I wanted to be sensitive to that for sure, since we moved things around a bit. Do you want to ask her to unmute and?
Does she want to talk about it?
I'm not sure, but,
Oh, she wanted to talk.
Martha, just say that we moved through the agenda more quickly than we expected, so we just concluded the public comment period, but if you'd like to comment, you're certainly welcome to.
Hi, I apologize. We got carried away and I didn't log in time to catch it all. So I'm so sorry I missed it.
No, not at all. To clarify, we took an extra public comment period earlier in the meeting and spent some time covering some things that weren't on the agenda. Just wanted to be sensitive of allowing folks who might be signing in closer to the originally warned period. So I definitely want to take the opportunity to hear and any comments that you've got and make the time for that.
Was it in regards to what I had spoken to? I forget who it was earlier today.
Well, this is Kari Bradley, we spoke earlier.
Yeah.
No, actually, when Doug made his comments, he didn't refer to the concerns you shared with me.
Okay, then I'll probably keep my concerns to myself then, because that's what he told me he was going to talk about tonight. So I was going to chime in if that's what he was going to talk about. Well, I'll say my piece anyways. Just we live above where Dylan Franks lives in his grandmother's house below us. And his grandmother's farm is across from the Calais school. And as we all know, the properties have deteriorated greatly. And now the farm the vehicles are now coming down to the house below ours on Route 14, just below our house. Our driveway goes up behind Lois Frank's house where Dylan is living. And there are several unregistered vehicles now. There used to be a school bus. There are appliances all over the yard. There's burned trash. And it's right on Route 14. So we're just concerned about deterioration of property and that place turning into something that looks similar to his grandmother's property across from the school. So that was just something that we shared a concern about. If there was anything the town had any interest of dealing with regards to that. There had been rats that had come up to our house from the house down below. We had a rat issue last year. Yeah, we've had a lot of issues and guns, but that's not a town issue. We've dealt with the police. There's trespassing. We've had to put up a fence. There's a map issue, which I've also discussed with the town. We're trying to get the map issue fixed. So we've had a lot of issues with that property, but it's not all stuff the town can deal with because we know there's legal issues, but what we share the concern with Doug that he came to our house and talked to us about yesterday, and he went to several neighbors as well, was if there was any kind of ordinances about cleaning up properties. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
Can I ask one clarifying question? Martha, when you referred to rats last year, did the town get involved? Did the public health officer investigate that?
Not that I'm aware of, no. The rats were living in the house. We were out of town and our neighbor across the street, Peggy Whitney, called us and said the rats have gone into our vehicles and eaten our seats. We called our house sitter and they said, yes, there's some rats outside. And so what they were doing was they were exterminating the house and the rats sort of went out of the house. But no, they were exterminating them out of the house. So they came up to our house and went across the street. So I'm not aware of, no, we didn't call the town. And I don't believe the Whitneys called either.
That just strikes me as an area where we do have some jurisdiction with a public health officer. I'm not all that familiar with that function of town government, but it's certainly something that I think we would want to understand if there was a public health concern.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep that in mind.
Well, thanks for raising the issue, Martha. I'd say that this is a relatively new subject matter, or at least new to the select board. So just have to afford us a little bit of time to do some research on you know what would be in our purview, or maybe what recommendations we could offer up to respond. So
I want to add one other thing. My husband's lived here since 1988. I've lived here for 20 years. The other thing that came right after the rats were coyotes. So we have never had coyotes in our actual, like on our lawn. So along with the rats came coyotes. And we have 2 dogs. We have put up a fence now in our yard, and we have cameras all over. So we now have coyotes that are in our yard, which is new. So again, and we've talked to game wardens, you know, about that. So we've kind of done our due diligence with regards to trying to get rid of the coyotes in our yard. So that's a new thing. My husband, again, since 1988, we haven't had them up here. So we think they ate the rats. There's more, you know, there's a lot more raccoons. Dylan has admitted to shooting raccoons, and there's a lot more skunks. There's a lot more pest animals around. He's burned trash. My husband's spoken to him because the smoke comes up and goes right in our bedroom. He has stopped doing that. He says it's his friends that do it, but he has not done it recently. So I will give him credit there. But you know, there's garbage bags outside. There's trash outside. We just aren't sure. I'm afraid of him because he has had guns that the police have confiscated. I'm afraid of him. So I'm afraid of him. So.
I would hear your concern, and we don't want to take your comments lightly. Again, I think we need to do a little bit of homework to see kind of what would be in the town's purview here, and if we fall short of expectations there, we can look a little further and what steps we might be able to take. But encourage you to keep in touch with Kari on this one, and we'll continue to find an opportunity to maybe bring it up on another agenda.
And the police are aware. We have contacted the police, talked about no trespass. So I just want to let you know, we have done that avenue. So, yeah.
Understood. Thank you, Martha.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, back to the debriefing on town meeting, if we could. So I'd say I think it went pretty well. As we were kind of expecting, there weren't too many controversial items on there, and there was I think a pretty healthy and productive dialogue on a number of items. And you know, nobody got kicked out or taken out to the backyard or any of that kind of stuff. You know, it was good. I think the presentation that we were able to give and that Kari prepared on the general budget was a kind of a step beyond our usual practice, and one that I think benefited the public. A huge thanks to, again, Tegan for all of the preparatory announcements that went out in advance. I think all of that kind of very transparent communication up front kept folks' comments during town meeting on point and reasonably informed, or coming from an informed position, which helps keep everybody's time efficient. But certainly it doesn't have to be restricted to my comments on it. If anybody else had other comments or recommendations.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that several people mentioned to me that they really thought Kari's slides were really helpful. And you know, all the years of going to town meeting and going, oh my God, this, budget is so long, and what am I supposed to think about it? And to just have it put in context was really helpful, folks.
That's good. I'll just share that I was really disappointed with myself with those two errors. That really knocked me sideways and,
It's too bad.
it just happened in the design, the editing process. They got inserted in there somehow. I don't know.
Well,
Can't
but
explain it.
it was not a math, I mean, the math.
The math
the
was
number
fine,
was
yeah,
right.
because it didn't start from the spreadsheet, it started from, it just got inserted somehow. The other thing, and this relates to Craig's point, is that for that presentation, I'll be sure in the future to highlight major projects like the Kent Hill matters. I mean, that's worthy of a minute of explanation. $30,000, people want to know probably what that is, so that's just a note for future.
Yeah, and more to that point, I think Tegan and others have done a lot of work to continue to kind of massage and refine the town website as a resource for the public. You know, 2023 and 2024, we had some pretty acute periods of road work relative to flooding events, but a little less so since then. And I think as we start to look at these, I'd say major projects, one of the things that Kari and I talked about was maybe working with the road crew or the road commissioner role to get some of these major projects on the website, just as from like an informational standpoint, so that at least if people ask about them, there's a resource there that kind of gives an idea of what the scope of those projects are, what the potential timing is. I mean, I want to be careful not to commit to, certain timelines, deadlines, or budgets, but, just in general, I think of as a way of helping the public be aware of what kinds of things we're going to be working on.
Maybe there should be a page on the capital budget with an explanation.
Yeah.
What we mean by certain.
And again, I think if we have more of those types of informational resources available on the website, it maybe takes the burden off of getting into the weeds during town meeting. What I really liked about the presentation is that it was a 30,000-foot view of things, and we weren't going way down the rabbit hole on individual line items. We obviously dedicated a ton of time to reviewing each of those line items in the months and months of meetings prior to. So I think that's all good. Try to do it again next year. Barbara, do you have anything? Come on, Barbara. All right. Well, thank you again, Barbara and Tegan and Kari for all of the work, and for Rose for taking the minutes.
We're not done yet, but nothing away at it.
If people ask, the Zoom is on the website. It went up last Wednesday. So if anyone missed it or couldn't come, I know a number of people took advantage of watching it from home, and they appreciated the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Is there anybody on Zoom that wanted to comment on this particular item?
Greg, substance for
Looks like it. All right, so the next agenda item that we've got is the select board calendar for review. Sorry. So one of the items that we also wanted to try to do for this more organizational meeting is just kind of take a look at the 2025 schedule, or at least the rest of the 2025 schedule, and do again 30,000-foot view of kind of what we're trying to accomplish this year. Some major objectives, I'd say, or goals, aspirations, is that we're taking the opportunity to meet more incrementally with some of the subcommittees. So we're trying to find ways to work that into this schedule. I don't know if I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Part of this is making sure that that we know of major kind of supplemental meetings like the Woodbury Fire Department meetings, the East Montpelier Fire Department meetings, when those are, so that we kind of have a better line of sight on when those are happening and kind of coordinate around those. Green items are, I believe, budgetary items. So, over the last couple of years, we've been a little more structured over how we solicit input on the annual budget and how we start that process. And so far, I think it's worked really well. So I think committing to that schedule is going to be beneficial. We can hopefully take a break from that for just a minute, just keep it to financial report review. But that's gonna kick off again, probably in August, when we're looking at doing some capital plan review, which will then inform other budget items later in the planning session. And then by September, October, we're kind of off to the races on soliciting input from subcommittees and other interest groups and stakeholders. And then
I mentioned there's a major project I don't think was highlighted in the calendar, is that we need to negotiate a new labor agreement with our road crew union. So we can discuss our approach to that, but that'll take some time. We'll probably involve at least one executive session, if not as multiple.
Do we have an expiration coming up?
It actually expires June of next year, but we asked them, can we try to complete this by the time we really get into budgeting? And they agreed. They said that they would like to start this summer. And they seem pretty happy with the agreement, so perhaps it won't take very long.
Well, that's a good point. So the way that worked last time, in a way I suspect that that's going to work, we would dedicate a group of individuals to represent the select board as the negotiating committee. Last time around, it was myself, Jamie, and Ann Toolin, which was a little unique in that we were 3, and that was a quorum. I think the recommendation was actually to be 2, so that there wouldn't need to be warned meetings. These individuals aren't generally taking any action, but they are participating with the town attorney during the negotiating process. So I think what we should probably consider doing is scheduling 1 or 2 executive sessions early on to review the contract together and organize some high level feedback, and then after that probably deputize those individuals with organizing and representing those that input with the town attorney, if that makes sense. So I guess that's probably have to start in tomorrow. May, probably at the latest. Is that all of the town plan? Another big one. But we can let's do the finer points, I guess, of the timeline, and then we can pivot to the town plan discussion. That's going to be the next agenda item. So Barbara, I guess context here, which we were kind of covering a little bit in some earlier conversation, was that essentially what we're looking at is a need to readopt a town plan that has been largely gone over and reviewed and edited for the most part. Get it readopted in a parallel timeline as also readopting our zoning regulations. And then the commitment from the Planning Commission is then to immediately follow, hopefully, a successful adoption of both of those policies and documents with a immediate revisiting of the natural resources section, which is the only section at this point that is going without a full update because of its kind of weight and size. So right now, the blue items are the remaining kind of timelines and commitments from the select board side of things. Is that, or actually, no, both planning commission hearing and hearings and the select board warned meetings.
Planning Commission's having a hearing on the 18th, and then Jared Weiss will be here on the 24th, your next meeting, to discuss, I guess, the hearing and then anything you want to discuss with him about the plan before your hearing on the 10th, is it? No,
Our hearing would be the,
April 14th.
Yeah.
oh, right, that's the, I'm sorry, the deadline to warn. So hard to keep all of them straight. So many deadlines. Yeah. So the idea is to try to stay ahead as much as possible of feedback so that we don't get partially through the hearing and warning processes without running into any unexpected roadblocks. Again, the urgency here is to really try to get these readopted in a meaningful way so that hopefully we have the updated zoning regulations readopted in time for the permit application season. And it will hopefully help reduce and mitigate any confusion that the DRB may have to go through, and certainly the zoning administrator in the application and approval of any zoning permits. So is that timeline pretty clear to folks as it's represented in the calendar?
I was just gonna comment that the second March meeting agenda, if it is gonna carry through with all those items, seemed very dense to try to cover the preparation for the town plan and zoning, as well as discussion around rules of procedure and then Conservation Commission and DRB, et cetera. So anyway, that was my thought.
Yeah, maybe we should spread out.
Just trying to spread that out.
At least one less guest, maybe.
Yeah, just not knowing how much discussion there is around the preparation.
So one thing, my understanding about the town plan, we can confirm this with Jared when he comes, is that they'll be presenting the plan in your hearing.
Right.
Because they've already done it once, they did the legwork, they're the most familiar with it. But you have an obligation to actually have a hearing and hear comments.
Right.
So if we can confirm that, but
So there may not, that may be a very quick thing.
that, yeah, but
Okay.
point well taken, that is a pretty ambitious agenda, and there'll be more items.
Right.
Yeah. Just in terms of, I mean, I love the concept of the check-ins with the various commissions and boards, and being able to give those folks the time they might need in front of the select board would be prudent.
So there is still well, maybe what we do is either myself or Kari check in with Larry or Willa and see if they really feel like there's something substantive that they want to bring up for those, or.
I've already booked them.
Okay.
Both committees have already agreed to this schedule.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you can't change it, but I just wanted you to know that they've already said, yes, they can be here.
Okay.
I'm meeting with Larry tomorrow, but I'll feel him out about that.
Okay, that would be good.
So, call.
That's really easier.
Just to see if you feel, well, I mean, I don't want to miss the opportunity to stay committed to these check-ins, but
Right, yeah.
We still have time. So the way that we generally set up the agendas, there's continued dialogue throughout obviously this week and next week. Right now we're in the pattern of meeting with Barbara Curry, Jamie and I, the Tuesday before. So we'll have a meeting Tuesday morning to review and kind of refine the agenda. So over the next week, we'll have the chance to kind of check in, I think, with folks who are tentatively on the schedule and see if there's some substance or a desire to use that time, and if we need to pare it back, especially with the dialogue around the rules and procedures, then we can kind of bump some of those.
Yeah.
All right.
So
I guess the other thing is that we're planning on making appointments during that meeting, so that is part of the reason. So that's more than just a check-in. There are some appointments to both of those committees, though maybe a little less so for Larry at this point.
Well, then maybe we can talk about ash trees
Yes.
Right.
All right.
and an ash tree plan.
Sorry, Barbara, we just tried, so buckle in. It's gonna be a long one. Yeah.
Sorry, saying if it's not really something where there's a
Yeah.
lot. That's not a big substantive point, then that's fine.
Well, I think that's a good, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say for this agenda item, I had these three framing questions that I
Yeah.
suggested, recognizing that this is sort of on a track already. And you don't wanna stop momentum, but you wanna understand what you're ultimately adopting and how you might want it to change after it's adopted, since it's gonna be reviewed again. So I had the clarifying questions. Is there anything that's making you a little squeamish about actually adopting this plan? And then what do you want to be on the list for the rewrite or the next iteration? And these questions wouldn't have to be answered tonight necessarily, but they are worth thinking about and the lead up to, I guess, ultimately to April 28th.
Well, I think there's credit worth giving to the degree of refinement that we've seen even in the last few weeks. I think with the town plan, I still ran into some typos and formatting, which typos I think are, are pretty minor, but under, I think it was on page 19, the formatting around goals and then the action items, the formatting looked like it got wonky on page 20, where number 7 just doesn't fall in sequence to any of the other outline items as either, and it doesn't necessarily look like that fits as an action item for that particular goal, I don't think. Anyway, so I guess my larger question is, is there a way that Jared or the planning commission would like to receive that kind of feedback now, prior to
I'll
their,
reach out to them tomorrow about these relatively minor edits.
Yeah.
I would hope that they can be incorporated. I think the select board can actually make minor changes without any additional process.
Right.
I think if you make substantive changes, you have to have another hearing.
Right.
Yeah, that was the case during the zoning regs last year.
Does anybody have any other comment? Have folks had the opportunity to kind of review the latest version as posted?
Significantly improved.
I did think that the document separating out the goals and action steps was extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are really the substantive, that's the stuff that we should be focusing on, it seems to me. Right?
Well, Jordan and I had a conversation about that before this meeting. That's 26 pages, not full, but there's a lot of bullets there.
Yeah.
And I guess my takeaway from that is that they're not. There can't be the expectation that we'll accomplish all those things in 8 years.
Right.
So it's more aspirational or more, there's even like a brainstorming element to it, I feel.
Yeah, and there's not full consistency from section to section, how it's set up and what the concept is. And it's easier to see it when it's all in one place. But yeah, I mean, I think that should be where our focus is as we're reviewing it, as opposed to the historical, informational, lengthy discussions, which might be good reading, but we shouldn't be editing that stuff, in my opinion.
No. I mean, I think it's, I find that historical information, important context for sure. I think where I'm still feeling like the document kind of falls short of expectations for me is where, like, how this operates as a benchmarking tool, like something that we're measuring ourselves against. There's even when you get into the goals that are listed in the first few pages, it comes across more of like a directive of things that just don't seem super actionable to me. That it doesn't get into what our targets are going to be. And I think one of the criticisms of the last version was that it was too heavy on specific goals and then the deadlines and then the people responsible for it, and you're just setting yourself up for failure. But
So you think they intentionally pulled back from that?
I think so, but I think we maybe corrected a little too far back, and if we have specific conservation goals about acreages or areas or something to that extent, or the number of houses that we'd like to see added, that I think that we as a community should feel like we can put forth some of those goals and aspirations, even if we don't have the specific mechanism for them, because those mechanisms are the things that we continue to talk about, or the policies that we adopt, using this as like the guiding document, like that sets the benchmark. So I'm trying to be really sensitive to the amount of work that this document takes to even go through and comb through it and refine it, and the amount of work that's been put into it. But part of what I'm still curious about is whether or not, because the planning commission is uniquely going to be, continuing to revisit and refining this document immediately after adoption, how open are they going to be to maybe trying to incorporate some of that feedback. I don't want to be the one that impedes this going through, and so that we can conduct business and continue to apply for grants, but I think that these are all good conversations and very timely conversations to be having in the state right now and in our community right now, and I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to kind of see those things incorporated.
That kind of matches my sense of, you got these 26 pages of goals. Was there a sense from the planning process that there were just a few areas that were top priorities, and maybe there are targets that could be associated with those?
And we talked with Jared about that in this room.
Yeah.
We need to set, the plan is a document that, we want to set the plan, the priorities for the town. It feels like they've done so much work, and what we're talking about now is just making it like easier to find the most important stuff. like I'm looking at page 4 of the 25-page document, and there it actually does say that Calais wants to add 19 net units of housing each year of the town plan. You know, like, huge goal, right? And then there's a whole bunch of stuff right here about all the ways we might be able to do that, but those aren't goals. Those are ways we're gonna try and, implement the goals, so.
And 19 is not, I mean, we're averaging, I went back because the school district asked, and we've been averaging, well, it's in the plan, 3.
Like 3,
Yeah.
yeah.
And many of those are, like last year were 2 existing camps that got modified and the town stormwater project.
Wow,
Or,
oh
so,
my gosh,
so, I mean, to go from that to 19 is not gonna happen anytime soon, I don't think.
That's a huge goal.
right, it's a goal, it's a huge goal, and. Yeah,
Well, and, you know, again, I think if you look at that, the issue of housing affordability is very ever present in the first 20. We keep mentioning it, and we go over the data about how many houses that we've been adding, et cetera. But then a lot of the verbiage, like the actual language, when you get into any of the sections, is about the conservation of natural resources, and it's very light on any discussion on what we're going to do to encourage development activities in a way that gets us closer to that specific goal. And I mean, the document seems to set it up as a priority, but then is short on any specifics on how we're going to encourage or promote. And again, for me, that like just kind of gets back to I'd say the same thing, I think, about conservation. I mean, I think this is a community that really values its natural resources and its recreational spaces and habitats. We spend a lot of time defining what they are and where they are and why they're important. But I don't see a lot about like, okay, well, here's how we're prioritizing this relative to a specific goal. Like if we have an objective, a similarly ambitious objective of conserving a certain amount of land, A, this is what it is, and B, this is the work we're going to do to try to identify what lands we're going to really focus on as a priority effort for conservation, so that we have a document that is guiding incremental decision making for each of the committees and the work that they do in the interim period between plan updates, or that we can go back and measure ourselves against and benchmark ourselves against. But yeah.
To your point, when I looked at the town plan on page 5, the vision, and we know we need housing, and that's really important. We will foster a community that thrives through continuous development and enhancement while safeguarding our rural essence. The first thing they say is preserving our agricultural lands. Well, we know ag soil and ag land is beautiful. We know that there's not very many operating farms in Calais. We know maybe some ag lands are flat, which would be a great place to put a housing development. And that's the first thing they say, preserving our agricultural lands. Well, if no one's farming, why are we preserving them or making that? It looks like that's the first priority. Then it says core forest, wildlife habitat, and natural resources for the well-being of our current and future generations. And then you look down and it says to realize this vision, Calais will support, and the first thing, development of diverse types of housing. So to me, those two things, why do you wanna preserve our ag land? I mean, I love it, but if it's beautiful and flat, right? Am I the only one thinking that?
Well, I think that, I think that, for me, I see the value in saying, that we like the bucolic, and, look, and feel and the character of the community that comes with, ag lands continuing to be available and utilized. And, I think what I'm trying to communicate is that, I think we can spend more time saying that, that we want to commit ourselves to identifying where those ag lands are, and which we do. I mean, we have overlay maps that show kind of where those things are, but those things are also going to directly compete with easily developable lands, or some of them may be in more flood-prone regions. So, I think that there needs to be like a further refinement of prioritizing, or at least identifying areas that kind of fall into this like hierarchy of efforts. So if we've got ag land that is in a flood-prone area, well, that's a great opportunity to say, we're not going to focus so much on efforts to develop or add housing, to this particular area, because we want to preserve ag lands, and B, keep housing out of flood-prone areas. And so I think that those are the types of action items, I guess, that I would personally want to see kind of represented in here, and this type of document. Yeah.
Being the first thing listed, preserving our ag land, and then to realize the vision, develop diverse housing.
One of the things I think they've done a great job is like starting to put acreage next to each one of these overlay districts. And I think that is a really helpful step in trying to quantify and measure and look at, more strategically, like where do we want to prioritize these different things. It'd be nice to see it go one step further again from my perspective. So, but
I just want to echo, I mean, I think, but it makes sense to me, because these are our values, right?
Right.
We care about both. You just said you care about both. So I think recognizing the conflict in our values as a community is an important thing to do. And we're trying to balance. First of all, these aren't all our decisions anyway. People settle their land.
Yeah.
But as a community, as we move through this next period of 8 years, are we going to tilt the balance a little more this way or that way? I think might help this document.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't even take into consideration the trees. The Conservation Commission keeps talking about 30 by 30 and conserved land and forests. Forests are not mentioned in either of those categories, not the housing or the ag lands. So it's the three different things almost conflicting.
I think each of the chapters or the sections have inherent push-pull. And I think that, I was kind of struck by the smart growth principles sort of in the middle there. Because some folks view those as sort of the umbrella thought process in development. And so I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm just dropping into this, but it does feel like I would very much agree that there's a lot here, and there's not a sense of like, this is the overriding issue. Housing does come up, but when you actually look at all the sections, each one of them has its own set of priorities, except for the natural resources that hasn't been really addressed or updated. So I don't know. I guess the question I'm having is where we are in the process. What does that allow us to ask for or expect of the plan itself, the commission and the public in terms of their input at this point around priority setting.
Yeah, so my response to that would be, it would have to be something pretty significant to change
Right.
the path between now and April 28th. However, go
However.
ahead.
However.
You finish my thought?
Yeah, well, however, then we're gonna start it all over again.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Can you help me understand what you mean by that?
Well, we need to, we have all agreed that it's an important priority to have a new valid town plan approved.
So other things
So
can move
that we
forward.
can reapprove the zone, the land use ordinances that were adopted by the town a year ago
Mhm,
at town meeting.
understood.
And because we know that the natural resources, section isn't now updated and the planning commission is gonna turn immediately to that,
Mhm.
that does open up an opportunity to go through the whole thing and make the priorities more clear,
Mhm.
for example.
Well, and I guess the question I would have to that is this intended to be a document that lays out all the different issues? And then there's maybe a process after that where those are then discussed and prioritized by this body or in coordination with others, right? It's not intended
To resolve anything.
to resolve it. It's intended to put them all out there and say, these are all the priorities. Go forth and figure out which ones you're gonna carry forward in the next 3 years versus 10, or you're gonna
Yeah.
look at again in
Uh,
another 2.
I think that's a really good point. Like,
Yeah.
what is the purpose of this document? And the way it reads now is here's the universe of issues.
Here's everything we care about.
Right.
There's distinctions from how it might have been written a few,
Yeah.
even a few years
I
ago,
agree.
sorry.
But Jared has said multiple times in meetings, like, they recognize that the goals in one section sometimes conflict with the goals in another section. And that there's not a resolution within the document on a hierarchy of those. So I sort of like the idea of sort of outside of the town plan itself.
And my
I think
concerns
there's
along with
those.
that, when you see wills and shalls and ensure,
Yeah,
they're each, they're fighting each other, and
Right.
how are we supposed to administrate that,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and
That's my word.
that's right, and I think, we, those make more sense in zoning regulations and that, in ordinances, and I get a little more bristly about the ensures, and shalls in a document like this, because my first question is, through what mechanism? And, I think in large part, the answer to that is, well, through the zoning regulations. Another interesting point that kind of struck me was that, in the things that are listed as kind of the acute inputs to the affordable housing situation right now, the first thing on the list is high interest rates, and then shortly after that, there's the building labor costs, and then also the material costs. But those are things that are, those are symptoms that are much more relevant to the last 4 years or 5 years than they are to the last 20 years. And so there's a pattern that goes well beyond just those handful of things. And I think more and more insight of late is relative to zoning regulations, and how they get leveraged to impede development for better or worse. And, I think this is the type of document that acknowledges that type of analysis and internal review and gut check with ourselves as a community. Like, do we want to look at making these more substantive structural changes within our community to make it easier for people to build houses? And frankly, like, are we going to be proactive in trying to find ways to encourage people to build houses, as opposed to just laying out all the ways that we're going to say no? And,
Yes.
and that's an important distinction, I think, because we don't, as a community, get to choose where those opportunities arise, but we do get to say, you know, where we would like to try to prioritize them, because these are the places that really matter and,
Right, we
fall in that.
creative context for people,
Yeah.
for it to be more welcoming, and I didn't write the page number down, but I did see that the request was, or the shall, maybe, Bill, I'm not sure, was that, there would be a housing and conservation commission. There's a suggestion that there be a joint housing, we don't have a housing specific commission, and that would certainly be a very important indication that we feel that housing is a priority, if we're setting forward that we need volunteers to come forward and think through this and work with us on it, so that's another. And I don't know, I saw that one, it jumped out at me, I don't know if there were others in there where they suggested, you know, additional, ad hoc or otherwise commissions that would be created.
And with that one, we have had at least one individual come forward and say, if you ever make something like this, I would like to serve on it.
Interesting.
There is-
Well, that's a fair amount of dialogue around the town
Yeah.
plan. I think there remains pretty uniform feedback, about some pretty substantial changes, though it sounds like we're just short of saying, no, we don't want to impede the progress of adoption, but it does, if I'm reading the room here, it sounds like we would like to push, I think, a little bit, for a little bit more substantive review in the immediate period following, when we're looking at the updated natural resources, to maybe open the dialogue a little more broadly for other changes, stylistic changes or structural changes. I think that gets well received.
So it's on your agenda, the next 3 meetings.
Yeah.
Sooner.
Are you wrapping up that agenda?
I think so.
Okay. I apologize. I did not hear the transition leaving the select board calendar review.
Yeah,
Town plan, so I missed that. I'm sorry. Can I?
it was a soft one. So
Go back to the calendar review for 2 quick things.
that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So, your October 13th meeting actually falls on Indigenous Peoples' Day. So I didn't know if you wanted to reconsider or look at rescheduling that. The prior meeting, September 22nd, it's a 3-week span between September 22nd and October 13th. So I'd like to suggest that you consider moving your October 13th up to October 6th instead, for those who might want to take Indigenous Peoples' Day and not have to come to a select board meeting that evening.
I don't have a strong opinion at this point, other than that seems reasonable to me. Does anybody have any other conflicts or issues with making that adjustment?
Fine, makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that
October
makes sense.
6th?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll update that on your calendar then. The other thing is, I just wanted to bring to all of your attention the very far right column that says special scheduling. To be sure and let us know, either Kari or myself, if you're going to be away for a select board meeting. This is the way we used it last year when different select board members were away and you were not going to Zoom in. And so we knew that you were going to be gone. And if in fact a second select board member says, oh, I'm going to be gone too, we were watching to make sure we had a quorum. So that's what that far right column is for, to let us know if you're going to be away or for any other thing we need to take into consideration. So either let Kari or me know your vacations calendar, for example. Thank you.
We're allowed to take vacation.
Not from select board, got a Zoom.
Good to
Question.
Well, it's gotta keep going. Cause then the fiscal year, but there's more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that joking aside, I think that the last couple of years, the members of the select board have gone above and beyond to zoom in when they're on vacation, and we've had a pretty dense calendar for many years. I think that's honorable, but part of having 5 of us is that it's, reasonably easy for us to form a quorum and carry on with business. So I would hope that everybody, let the staff and each other know when vacations are or whatever, but feel free to take your vacations. It's a volunteer position. And folks should balance that with personal health and work-life balance and all those things. So it's my,
So Memorial Day is crossed out, is that just not happening?
That's correct.
Okay.
Let me go back and take a look at it. I don't know if we rescheduled it or if we just
Yeah, we're
decided
gonna
to
meet-
delete it.
The first Monday in June, instead of the last
I see,
Monday in May.
okay,
And then we're gonna then not meet again for 3 weeks.
okay,
So there's one less meeting in that 6-week period.
gotcha,
whatever it is.
thank you.
I do have a question. Thanks for bringing the schedule back up, Barbara. On April 14th, there's a note that the select board hearing on the town plan is at 7. Is the meeting beginning at 7?
I think I can answer that, but you guys can correct me. The meeting doesn't start at 7. The select board meeting will start at your usual time.
Okay,
But this will be on the agenda for 7 PM, and that's because the different planning commission members can't make it to a meeting until 7 PM.
thank you.
okay. Everybody feeling good about the schedule then, for now? We'll circle back to, the FY 2026 municipal highway grant conversation. So pretty comprehensive list of items in
Yeah.
Kari's memo. I don't know if you want to do a brief synopsis of all
Yeah,
of those.
please. So there's two issues that we're looking for guidance on. Toby and I are preparing the grant applications. These are the town or the municipal highway grant that the state offers each year. April 15th is the deadline. The first one, let's discuss, is Class 2 highway. So Class 2 is the paved part of County Road, Worcester Road, Kent Hill, North Calais, Foster, Pekin Brook. Those are the main Class 2, so it's a small number of roads. And money is made available, and this kind of grant is 80% up to 200,000. And so the thing that comes immediately to mind is some repaving of County Road, all right? It's on people's minds.
Yes.
We don't have to make a commitment to when we're gonna pay for this, and how we're, gonna fund it right now. But to get the application in, we need to present a scope of work. And so we did get one quote last week from Pike, who's done paving work for us before. And they're saying 140,000 per mile. This is just to grind the top and 2 inches. So it's not a permanent fix. It's a temporary fix. 5 to 7 years is what they've said. But they also stress that this is your most cost-effective approach, because to go back down to the base is gonna.
That's called chip and seal, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It'd be extremely expensive, and I didn't get a quote along those lines, but the idea here is this would buy us some time to get a longer term plan in place. So if you agree with that approach and want to start this process to apply, and again, we can apply by April of this year if we got the grant, and Toby said he's gotten every grant except for one in all of his years of doing it. So pretty good chance. We would have until December of 2026. We'd have a year and a half So we could incorporate this, whatever we decide, into next year's budget and get it done in the first half of that fiscal year. So 3 options. We could apply for 1 mile only. Presumably that would be the southernmost mile. That's the oldest mile. And that would cost the town approximately $28,106. All right, so that's one option. We could look to do 1.5 miles. The logic of that being we could get it done in 2 portions. That would be 42,160 approximately. Or if we wanted to maximize that $200,000 grant, we would go for 1.78 miles. And then that would be 50,000 for us. And this is cash. There's no in-kind here because we don't do that kind of work. So again, we don't have to decide how and when we pay for that necessarily. It'd have to be over the next 1.5 years. But we wanted to get a sense from the select board of, if you want us to pursue this grant, which of those 3 options makes the most sense to you?
Well, I guess my question would be, if we do this, what is, can we reapply again? I mean, if the thing breaks up in 2 years, can we apply for another grant?
Yeah, we can apply for a grant every year.
Okay.
Have we used this method before paving that road? Does anybody know in terms of?
I believe we have.
Oh, yeah.
Defaults?
I
It's
know
usually what,
I know we have, I wanna say that the last time County Road was done, it was done in 3 sections.
yeah.
I think we went all the way to the base. In fact, you were telling me
Yeah.
about the problems with
Okay.
the northernmost mile. Is that right?
No, the closest to,
The southernmost.
the southern, the one that's the worst.
Yeah, yeah.
So, go ahead.
I'm just not clear on best practices of highway paving, so how often does it need to be completely dug up and redone? Is that called repaving? Versus how often, how many times can you do the grinding, repairing thing? Ooh, that wasn't very well. put.
So there's, if this comes close to the edge of my expertise, but I guess on the subject, but it sounds to me like this is just going to be the regrinding of the top layer. So you'd just be like grinding up, chipping up the whatever asphalt layer there is, and then underneath that you've got a layer or 2 of different types of grades of stone that create the base. I think when East Montpelier did theirs, they went a little bit further
Yeah,
down,
that's right.
and that's why it was exposed and for such a long period of time, because they were also doing base prep and compaction, and so that's a step beyond that. I don't know how that road was ever constructed. I mean, if we went the full-blown rebuild, that would be, probably taking out like 12 inches of material and road fabric, and that starts to get to like state highway level of resurfacing, where you're putting in a lot of aggregate and fabric and stuff.
Right, which, I mean, I had heard that before,
Yeah.
that we were thinking about doing it in 1 mile sections. That's what you're talking about when you talk about that, is like having to redo.
I don't know,
Go down to the base.
probably not. I would think that
This
it's not.
proposal is not that.
It's not,
This
right.
proposal is to,
Just to
the
serve.
way I characterize it is to buy some time.
Yeah.
Until we can get a longer term plan in place, because I don't know the numbers, but Pike would just discouraged us from going that route at this point, because it's gonna be so expensive. You really
Right.
need to have funding set up to do it.
Well, and at that level, we'd also be looking at doing culverts. I mean, I think that there's the culvert right after the town line that's in that dip where there's a pretty significant amount of like the base material is going away because the grading of the elevation adjacent to it is like so steep that the material is likely pushing out, and that's why the rut on the right
That's a
hand
good point. Every
north
culvert-
side is like.
Every culvert along the way you'd want to study that and make sure, because you're not gonna revisit those.
So-
for a while.
I have 2 questions, I guess. One is that, originally when we've had this conversation, it was talking about the state's contribution towards just doing a mile at a time, is that a separate pot of money than this particular grant, or is
No,
that?
it's not
This
a
is
mile
that.
at a time, it's.
It's just up to 200, gotcha, okay, so this is the same thing.
Same thing.
So the second question is, I guess,
Excuse me, $200,000 of cost.
The state will contribute up to $200,000, 80% of the project up to two.
Okay, all right.
So we're always gonna contribute 20% minimum. If
That's
we
why-
wanna go beyond 200,000, it's gonna be more than 20%.
Gotcha.
is there, in the light of the federal aid conversations, is there an opportunity to stack these grants in the
It doesn't
future?
appear that there's any, special monies available for, federal highways. Is that what we call them?
Federal aid.
Federal
Federal
aid,
aid
I-
highways.
Had to look at recently.
Which I think I buy that because the state has been funding all town roads, you know, including federal aid highways.
Just to throw out a fourth option on this list of options.
Okay,
It's come up a couple of times that we need to also think about the two other paved roads in town.
yes.
I don't know how they are in condition versus county road, but might there be,
Marshfield is in pretty bad
is in
shape.
pretty bad shape. So might there be a fourth option of 1 mile of county and sort of using the rest of the grant
For Marshfield?
for Marshfield?
Yeah,
I don't know.
and in fact, they quoted us, Marshfield as well.
Okay.
So, and Marshfield's about a half mile. So you could, between, options 2 and 3, you could do a mile of county and cover Marshfield.
Does the ask at like in any way, affect the likelihood of?
Sorry, but Marshfield's not class 2,
Oh.
Oh, right.
What is that?
class 3.
So not qualified for
It's not, it
this.
doesn't qualify for this grant.
Really?
Even as a paved segment, I thought that was like an automatic qualifier of.
I don't know the history of that, because the other paved roads in town are that little section on Moscow Woods and that little section on Lightning Ridge, and those are both class 2.
Hmm.
So I don't know how we got Marshfield.
We think it's because of the slope there. The slope, because it's so steep.
Yeah, it must.
It's one of the steeper roads in
I
town.
figure the town took that on and said, this is the right thing to do with this section of road.
Hmm.
And I guess if we wanted to do anything this year, if it was possible, we'd probably have to put a bond up for it, wouldn't we?
Well, we could do, if we got this grant, you know, and we apply by April 15th, we'll know, by construction season, and we could scrape together $28,106, we could do a mile.
My feeling is just that, you know, if the road really comes apart and gets people to wait a whole nother year, it's gonna be difficult in this room.
Yeah.
Could be.
I
And
mean,
we could also scrape together.
we heard that in
$42,000.
town meeting, right? That sort of motivated us, and when we got the quote, it's like, oh, it's not as expensive as we were led to believe. And we have fund balance, so we didn't budget for this, but we could make it a priority.
I mean, I think that having, driving on that every day. I don't, even if we're starting from the southern edge, I don't see where a mile is gonna get us all that far. And if we're gonna go through the mobilization and the doing it and trying to, scratch together the funding, I think our minimum consideration from my perspective is at least a mile and a half. And trying to get at least to the halfway mark of completing that.
But also, it's the middle piece that's the best, in my opinion. I mean, it's the latest piece that's almost as bad as the first piece. The middle piece isn't quite as bad. But.
Right, but the mile and a half is a 2-year plan as opposed to a 3-year plan. So.
Right. I mean, I
You
think,
can do it two projects. Right,
Well, if you wanna do 1.5 miles, right, you do one No. Okay.
But we got Marshfield as well, so
Mhm.
it's just,
Forgive me if you've already said this. So County Road would actually be closed during the time of all this work. We'd have to do a long around, or it would just be closed to one lane and.
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
Yeah,
road,
they don't
roads,
close it, they don't
I don't,
close
I
it,
mean, usually it's just one lane.
one lane.
last year, wasn't it closed while East Montpelier was doing
But
it?
that's because they were doing
They
two
were
big
culvert
culvert
for a while.
replacements, so they
Okay.
had to rip up culverts that blocked
Okay,
both lanes.
so if you did it in 3 sections and it was 3 different times, it would not be closed during any of this. People could get by, maybe a backup because it's one lane, but it's not gonna ever be closed with a long detour.
I think it would be it would very likely be one long period of time, of alternating depending on what phase of the work they are. So they'll scrape up one side,
Okay.
and scrape up the other side. It won't be closed, it would just be one lane.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Can't say never, but.
But to be clear, we don't know for sure. I mean.
We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I can't say.
So, did I understand that, like, the fifth, obviously, like, option 3 is, it's, as it's stated, is maximizing the grant award, meaning you'd be able to get the most grant funds,
Take
and it's
advantage
the
of
most
that.
cost effective as well. I know it's
Is it?
maximizing the grant award, but it's not necessarily the most cost effective, that's not what I'm.
The way Pike quoted it, it's by the mile. So it didn't. We asked them about that. If we did all 3 miles plus Marshfield at the same time,
Right.
would we save? And they didn't quote it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
And then my other question is timing. You mentioned, maybe going ahead and trying to push through, this summer or this year. Would we be able to do the 1.5 miles if that were?
Could we pull together $42,160?
Yeah,
I would wanna think on that.
Yeah.
And come back to you and tell you exactly what that means.
yeah.
But we have fund balance. We have money.
It seems between 1 and 2, there's a cost advantage to do 2.
It's the same ratio though.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the 42 is 50% more.
Okay, I take it back.
But what I like about the 1.5 is you can imagine getting this done in 2.
Yeah,
Right, two full swap, no,
Yeah.
like two, yeah, no, I think. Costs aside, I think the amount of time that it would take them to do the extra half mile as
Right.
opposed to not having the extra half mile. And the inconvenience of having the road, traffic broken up, like from my perspective, I think there's a real compelling. Reason to at least try to go for the number 2 and try to do the best we can to figure out the $42,000.
Just, maybe this is obvious, so if Marshfield Road is not a class 2 highway, that means we'll have to come up with 75,000 or something to pay that half mile on our own,
I think
correct?
so, unless there's some grant that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
We didn't deem it to be a priority because it's just as old as the oldest part of the county, but I didn't really study that one, I didn't get into that.
Barbara?
I have a Debbie Downer question. So are you looking to enter a contract here? And the reason I'm asking is
No.
because whatever you commit to, what if there's catastrophic flooding or something else unscheduled, unplanned for, unforeseen that comes up? Where does that leave us in this contract or this agreement?
So that's a great question. This is not a contract, this is a grant application. So if we get the grant, we don't have to follow through on it. But
Okay.
once we sign a contract to do the paving, we will. And what happens if a flood hits then? We should have some contingencies in mind, but, at the worst case scenario, we borrow money. And the town can always borrow money, I think, but you
And
know,
there are
so
probably some
we-
towns who've gone through this recently and might have words of wisdom for us.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, and there's some new municipal funding opportunities coming through the Treasury Department that we're just starting those conversations too. I think the decision now is to give some guidance on applying for the grant and
right,
then
and we have some time to figure out when.
when and how, yeah.
And if we decide we just can't do it, it wouldn't be the first grant we let go.
Two small things. One is just from a public perspective, if we did try to push it through to happen this summer, they're also planning to do 14 this summer. You might get some complaints that there's no way to get anywhere, which is not true, but you may get that feedback. Also, Marshfield just doesn't get as much traffic as county. Like, I would love it if you paved it. That would be great for me, but it's not as active by a long shot as County Road, so it won't break down as quickly.
It also raises for me, I think, well, I guess we kind of already covered that it's a bit of a moot point because the federal aid funds don't really mean anything, but there's a document that says there's buckets of potential money that are applied to these things. And one of the outstanding questions I have from kind of that initial review is, you know, where are opportunities for like reassessing what those designations are? Because that particular road segment goes up North Calais Road to Foster Hill. And, you know, I think the reality of geography and everything else is that it makes sense for that to be maybe North Calais to Moscow Woods and connecting down that way if they're going to make the designation. And so, you know, who do we talk to about evaluating that change so that we don't run into future FEMA issues and or, you know, if there is ever a change to federal aid support that it's we're maximizing that input. And I guess similarly, like, should we be looking at, because the Marshfield Road is one of those federal aid highways as well. Or at least it was intended, I'm pretty sure it is, I saw it on there.
And it's busy, it's not as busy as county, but there's plenty of trucks going up and down that road.
But I was pretty sure one of the qualifications for a class 2 was that it was paved. And so we should maybe look at.
No, because Kent Hill and North Calais roads are.
Class 2.
Our class 2.
They're class 2.
Yeah.
They're like, not the word collector, because that's
Right.
something else, but they're the,
Connector.
they're the place, the roads that get you east or west or north or south through a town.
The state has particular interest in that, because I remember this goes back a while ago now, but they were interested in paving from Worcester all the way through to Marshfield.
Oh, I've heard some of this.
They were interested in doing that. And so, you know, the state does have an interest in keeping that piece of road open if it goes across like that. So we didn't do it, of course.
Well, that might have been around the time that like those federal aid funds were getting leveraged a little more. It was just interesting going through the old maps and then seeing around the time that program was coming about, that certain roads were being highlighted and getting this designation. You know, in retrospect, I don't think it proved out quite as the initial pass was, but it'd be interesting to revisit those designations. Whoever's responsible for it, there's got to be a process for it. And I'll talk to Toby about it.
So that was that's only the one issue, right?
Yeah, but am I taking, sensing support for the 1.5 mile option?
I like the 1.5.
Yeah.
I do too.
So the other issue is the structures grant, which is for bridges and culverts. And we have two likely candidates. And again, this is another expensive project that's 80-20 up to 200,000. So I don't know that we're gonna be able to afford all of this, but I think there is some value in sort of for our longer term capital planning. Which of these do we think is a priority? And we can go get some cost estimates on the higher priority one anyway. Because we do have hydraulic studies done for both, we're talking about Adamant Road right outside the village, or right in the village essentially, and then, Bliss Pond Road, where it washed out so terribly in 23 and then washed out again in 24. So both are needs. Both the studies call for much larger culverts, and so we just want to get a sense of which do you have a preference to? I think Toby's in favor of Bliss Pond just because it's much more straightforward project. There's no sensitivity about historical issues. We're not sure if that's an issue with Adamant or not. And the aesthetics of it aren't, there's definitely going to be considerations about the aesthetics of the Adamant. But both are important projects. It's just a matter of, we're gonna start working on one of them.
I have almost the exact opposite feeling, is like, because Adamant is likely higher traffic
Yep.
and more complicated. I feel like at least prioritizing the application for a grant for that one, gets the ball moving on a complicated something that needs to be addressed, and it's come up a couple of times, from, members of that community about trying to address it, and the repairs that have had to happen
Yeah.
down there for the last 2 years as well.
Yeah. And there are concerns on Bliss Pond like that as well.
Yeah.
The neighbors or the landowners are very concerned, so, but.
The Adamant Road is more traveled, yes.
Yes,
Yeah. I think that's a pretty important qualifier.
Yep.
I do,
Yeah.
okay. Sounds like Adamant.
I
Okay.
think Adamant.
Again, I don't see how we're gonna be able to afford County Road and this culvert,
Yeah.
plus, we're planning on doing Kent Hill this year. We've also got the Loose Road culvert, which is a major project.
Mhm.
That grant expires a year from December. So it's a lot. But,
So on that one, you're just going to proceed to find out how much it would cost.
that's right.
And even if we apply for the 1.5 miles on the paving, we might get down the road and say, wow, we can only afford the Adamant project if we do 1 mile of county or something.
Yeah, we'll see.
We
We'll have
adjust
the
as
numbers to
needed.
consider.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You, Terry. That brings us to reports. Ordinance Advisory Committee, I saw that Barbara sent out another call for committee members and relative, and we have two.
Two applicants,
Yep,
and they're both scheduled,
go for it. Yeah, please do it.
two applications, and they're both scheduled to attend next Monday, so we get 9 ordinance advisory committee. And so the next time you meet and you're looking at board committee and commission appointments, we'll have the feedback from the ordinance advisory committee as to how those two interactions went.
Great. Sounds like road issues are next on the docket, so that's gonna be a fun one. Thank you. Is there anything else to consider for the?
We didn't
Ordinance.
meet last week because it was town meeting week.
Yeah.
I did want to clarify which select board members we want as we really dig into roads. I know we talked about the possibility of moving around. So I just wanted to check in with you all and see if we are it's still Bill and Jamie, or if we wanted to switch anyone in or out.
Bill or Jamie?
I am willing to continue, but if somebody else has a particular interest, I would happily pass the baton.
I echo Jamie's feelings as well.
I have no complaints about the current members. I just- Discussion of possibly, like, as we moved along, swapping
Right.
folks in and out, as interests and skills, became more.
Yeah, I mean, that's a subject I'd love to participate in. I'm Not exactly sure. I've got the bandwidth in my schedule quite yet, but that may be changing in the next month or so. So, I'll put that forward. I think if current numbers are feeling okay for the next month or so, maybe we check in and revisit that.
Good.
We might be able to tag in. Thank you. Any other town clerk related updates?
The election process all went really well on town meeting day. It's just a really nice day. We have such excellent volunteers who helped out, and voters were all great. It's just, I feel really fortunate. I hear horror stories from other towns about how difficult some voters or volunteers can be, and I really appreciate just how supportive everyone is during the process. So it was very smooth. It helped that nothing was contested this year, so it's a good process. We're still cleaning up around the town office. But I'm really glad we don't have another one for next year. So I can work on some other things.
Thank you, Tegan.
And thanks to Barbara, of course. She was there beginning to end with me that day. And it's invaluable.
Thank you. Kari, was there
Yeah.
other items to
A couple
cover?
more things, yet another grant, report. So if you're not aware, the town got a grant to have Boys and Kings study the culvert right here, at Kent Hill, which is a major, junction for water, right? So they've been doing an engineering study for the past year plus, and they're almost done. So the last steps in that will be, they'll meet with I guess Toby and myself, and then there will be a public hearing, so they can present their, results. They'll incorporate the comments, and then they're gonna do a benefit cost analysis, so that we can use all that information to go get another grant to actually build the thing. So this is another, project in the pipeline. Probably 2 or 3 years out, I'm sure. But, just want to give you that update. We're waiting instructions on returning a portion of our FEMA money because it's federal aid highway. We estimated to be about $66,000. But we want to, ideally, we would wait till we actually receive money from the Federal Highway Administration.
Yeah.
And we think it's going to be an equivalent amount, maybe slightly better, because they reimburse up to 100%.
Well, that's encouraging, and it,
But part of that has been, formally identified, and we signed off on it, so we're waiting on the instructions on that.
oh, cool.
So we do have some approval from on the federal aid highway.
Yes. Yeah, it's still mind boggling that we got all the way through that process. And you're like, oh, you're using the wrong.
Wait until you read about the toll road section.
So if even Toby didn't know about this all these years, what do we benefit from being a federal
So,
aid highway?
Exactly.
well,
Now we can go.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to circulate a document that I found, but, you gotta dig pretty deep. Best I can tell is that like the federal aid highway designations, really started to kind of ramp up in like around the 30s to 50s era, and had a lot to do with, interstate, infrastructure, planning and funding.
The Eisenhower Interstate.
Yeah, pretty much exactly. And so it, as it's evolved, it's designated various areas of, or categories of investment at the state level. So, very anecdotally, it seems like the states were then charged with kind of taking a 30,000-foot view and identifying like what would be natural corridors of connection from one route to the next. And then they get mapped and put on a map as a resource, and it's just a qualification essentially. And there's also some, traffic studies that I'm sure were initially involved. Anyway, there's an interesting, it was a congressional research document that was online that I found that kind of outlines a very broad scope of like what these funds are and how they can be used. But it's pretty clear that they're intended for like pretty significant infrastructure projects.
Well, so that's a good explanation about what a federal aid highway is supposed to get. But if all these years, even Toby wasn't aware of it, what have we been getting, or what have we been missing that we need to learn from and be sure we don't miss out on in the future?
I think we've already done it. I mean, I think that the only situation from what I have read that is like, that becomes like a detriment from having it is that it just puts any kind of funding for emergency repairs into a different bucket of resources, and then that's where the conflict with the FEMA reimbursement and the federal aid reimbursement, what's pretty encouraging is that even after this kind of surprise, like accessing a reimbursement through the federal aid program was pretty quick. Like that's a pretty quick acknowledgement that we're just gonna, make sure that you're made whole through this different pot of monies for emergency response. But I do think that it's probably worth paying attention to what roads have that designation, if there's a chance for us to leverage other pockets. I know it's hard to imagine in this particular political environment, but it seems like an asset. It was just kind of a surprise in this particular situation. But yeah, I mean, there is a state map. I found that it's buried in one of the other map resources on the AOT website. Yeah, it's fully on our radar now. All right.
The only other thing I wanted to mention again about ash trees, because the ash tree grant application deadline's coming up. And it's great that I didn't know anything about this, but Neil Maker, our tree warden, had done a bunch of work with community members, like Ann mentioned last time. So we have an inventory. He actually has done some more recent work just to verify some numbers. So we have what we think are the priorities. It's a limited amount of money, $12,000 maximum. I don't think it'll go that far, but it's a start for us anyway. And reason I'm really mentioning it is because if we think it'll be helpful for the grant application if we have an adopted ash management plan, which the CPRC, I guess, drafted for us, but we never finalized. So Neil is gonna work on it. He and I will bring you something. I'm hoping Neil can attend the next meeting and we can hopefully get that adopted and then use it in our application.
Awesome.
And
Great.
have a plan to do.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of ash trees apparently.
Yeah, I mean, the prioritization, it sounded to make a lot of sense relative to the inventory. So, yeah, look forward to taking a look at that. Thanks, Kari. Does anybody else have anything, any other questions or comments? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.